The Green Climate Fund is currently the largest instrument available to help countries to address their climate change problems, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. The Green Climate Fund, however, does have very large and complex projects to get into. And as a separate window, they've established this program called the Readiness Programme for smaller grants. And by small, we're talking of about $1 million per year per country. So it's an entry level. It also has a very different focus, because while the programs themselves, the large-scale projects, which are often in the $100 million range, are to address specifically mitigation and adaptation, readiness is to help countries, as the name says, become ready in a number of different ways. So it's about doing the type of groundwork, preparatory studies, support, policy integration, all kinds of different activities that a country may need before it's ready to even jump into a large-scale program. One of the key elements to keep in mind is that countries cannot access readiness directly. They need to go through a readiness partner, which in this case are the accredited entities, and FAO has been accredited since 2017. So since we started, we've helped already 10 countries get readiness grants for a total value of almost $7 million. The readiness programs, of course, are demand-based, so we don't select countries, it's the other way around. The nationally designated authorities of the countries come to us asking for assistance. In some cases, we also suggest that countries may want to approach it. For example, we were recently approached by Syria asking for help in developing a full-scale proposal. Given the very difficult situation in the country, we suggested that they should first go for a readiness program, which would provide the preparatory groundwork. In other countries, for example, we've had 2 readiness projects approved in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, which is a country which would probably not access full-scale proposals because it's an upper middle-income country, but they're interested in support for aligning their policy frameworks on climate change adaptation. So these are very concrete examples. At the same time, we have readiness proposals in low-income countries like Sierra Leone, in Kyrgyzstan, and so forth. So it's a very broad footprint. Climate change is one of the SDGs in its own right, but it bridges across, of course, into poverty reduction, into sustainable production, into oceans, into so many other sectors. So it's a very broad range. But we also need to consider that the SDGs in country are often owned by a development ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Rural Planning, whereas the climate and environment portfolio is owned by separate ministries, environment, climate change, and so forth. And they don't always necessarily align with each other. There is a need to build bridges between them. So this is a critical function where we can engage more closely with them to build the policies, to build the coordination, to bring in civil society, bring in multiple actors, academia, look at opportunities for private sector engagement, because this is something which the GCF is very keen on, is to leverage private sector funds. At a very high ratio of 9-to-1 is their ambition. So laying the groundwork through value chain studies, market analysis of how the private sector can be brought to invest in climate change adaptation mitigation. This is a very interesting point. So it's about getting all the actors together around the table.